All right, so I'd love to speak on this theme. I've been here before and spoken on this theme, but I want to go perhaps into a little bit more nuance about wise speech. And so just so that, especially those who may be new to the Eightfold Path, this is the Buddhist path, dating back to the Buddha, still so relevant, profoundly relevant, always relevant to the human condition. So great. Um, I just want to name what the Eightfold Path is, wise speech being one of the factors. And I like to basket it. The Eightfold Path, they're kind of, it's considered that these different factors of our practice, and we really bring them all into our present moment experience as much as possible. We blend them almost like what a good chef does, you know. You're keeping all of these factors kind of in on the front burner, on the burner. You're kind of attending to all of these different factors in our practice. We get to know them, we deepen our understanding. And so I like these three baskets of how to kind of categorize these factors. And so there's one basket that's the wisdom basket for some of these factors that we cultivate. And the factors that fall into the wisdom basket are wise view, wise intention, and wise effort. And then there's this basket of morality or sila. It's our ethical conduct. And this involves wise speech, of course. It's how we show up in the world. It's a real ethical aspect of our practice, as well as wise livelihood and wise action. And then there's the third basket of meditation that supports and deepens our meditation in the spirit of enlightenment, of freedom from suffering. And this is wise concentration and wise mindfulness. So these are the 8 factors, and just want to bring them all into our consciousness. But today I'm going to focus mostly on wise speech, of course, and you'll see how some of these other factors do blend in. They all blend. They all support each other. We bring them in. And I want to say that wise speech, it's just such an important area for our practice. You know, our life is just constantly, think about it, really reflect on this. It's just filled with communication, with speaking all day, right, everybody? You know, there's this face-to-face, of course, communication with people that we're close to, people that we don't know very well, strangers that we come into contact with. There's phone calls. And now, of course, in this age of digital age, there's texting, right, everybody? Wow, texting. There's signal chat, right? Right? It's really emails. Think about emails. So can you think of this arena of speech? It really does involve a lot of how we show up in the world, right, everybody? So I just want to really amplify this a little bit and say that this is a big factor, I think. It really is. So daily, we're really communicating in different ways, and also perhaps we're listening. And I'll talk a little bit more about listening. So it's deeply relevant in the way that we live our lives today. And I'll say it's a really tricky arena. Yeah. It's ripe for a lot of um, harm. My words, your words, they are powerful. They are powerful. Words can, depending on how they're used, where they're, you know, I'll be talking about these different factors, they can either support, heal, and actually awaken. Yet at the same time, so easily our words can harm and hurt and imprison, right? And I'm sure all of you have experienced, and as I'm talking, just reflect on this, staying with your direct experience as I'm speaking, really staying really close in for how this lands for you. We've all had experiences of words of someone else that have been helpful to us. Can you feel into that? Can you feel into a time where someone spoke words and it just really landed and it really supported you? and a time when you were in a position where your words really landed in a skillful and wholesome way with someone else. Can you all reflect on that and feel that? Can you all feel into that experience a little bit? Yeah, the tone of when it's wholesome. We are really noticing in our practice, in all of these factors, the tone of what it is to experience wholesome and unwholesome and learning from that. And then, of course, we can also really think about a time when something was shared that it was not helpful. Perhaps you can, and not to go too deeply into this, recall a time when someone spoke words to you that really stung and just ouch, right? Painful. Or perhaps we've all done this. We've said something we regret, and we could feel immediately in the moment how it wasn't right. Do you know what I mean? Something you said, and then you immediately wish you could take it back. Do you guys all know that feeling, right? So you can feel into that tone of when it's unwholesome or unskillful, and the suffering that this causes. We can often say the most harmful things at times to the people closest to us. Isn't that ironic? In the heat of the moment, right? Our filters are down, our defenses are down, and we say things, we so regret it. So much of the suffering in the world actually hinges on how we speak. So there's a lot of potency in our words and in this practice. There is such tremendous impact. You know, we talk about in Buddhism, we talk about karma very simply, without getting too esoteric. Karma is just this cause and effect. If this happens, this happens. If I speak in a skillful way with wise speech, I experience the wholesome karma. You know, we really are noticing the cause and effect in every moment. We're really tuning in to that direct experience. So I also want to say that with this practice of wise speech, it is never perfect. There's never this is not an end game. I don't think you ever get to the point where, oh, I've got this, you know. There's so much subtlety, and I'm going to open up maybe a little bit more of the subtlety of this practice. But it's beautiful when we're really in that understanding of exploring this. There's no end to it. It's really a life practice that we return to every day. Every day is an opportunity to deepen our understanding of how our words, our communication can relieve suffering. Beautiful, right? Is it inspiring that your words can be a vehicle to reduce suffering in the world? It's within your power. Sometimes we feel like, well, what can I do? Every day there's something. So just to talk little bit traditionally, how the Buddha defined wise speech, I'll kind of quote the Buddha, but then I want to just kind of refine it into more relatable, simple, only 4 kind of main qualities that I'll kind of explore with more subtlety. But the Buddha defined it as an abstinence of false speech, abstinence from malicious speech, abstinence from harsh speech, abstinence from idle chatter. So these are the main. And then he also reframes it in the positive, which is really nice. He says, only say what is true, speak only in ways that promote harmony among people. Only ways that promote harmony among people. Using only a tone of voice that is kind and gentle. The tone, how you speak. Sometimes that's what's, in my experience, it's how someone speaks that I pick up on. Do you know what I mean, everybody? It's that, because you're feeling the deeper intentionality. Sometimes it's not the words. Many times it's not the words. And to speak mindfully in order that the speech is useful, timely, and purposeful. So I'm going to break this down now and just talk about, maybe if we could just put this into really simple categories, that the speech be kind, that it be true, that it be timely, and that it be useful, of benefit. And you'll see all these kind of blend together. And also all of these, these different aspects of wise speech, they're all deeply supported by mindfulness. This capacity to have knowing awareness, to be self-aware, to be present, to slow down, and to kind of check ourselves, to become mindful, to go, what's really going on with me, with whoever else is involved in the communication? What's really happening here? So I want to first start with this category of speaking honestly of what is true. And of course, in general terms, we all want to speak the truth. And the Buddha did say that speaking a deliberate lie is one of the greatest evils. One of the greatest evils, to speak a deliberate lie. So, that's the way that the Buddha kind of framed this. But then on a more subtle level, what's really good about being honest and truthful is to always be kind of, and this is like a life practice, right? Is to check what the deeper intentionality is behind the words. And remember, wise intention is one of the other path factors. So you can see how these all blend. They're all supporting each other. What's the quality or the attitude of the heart mind out of which these words are coming? That is really going to be what the outcome, what the fruit of the experience will be. So am I speaking from a place where I want to influence? I mean, think about this. This is more, am I wanting to influence with the other person? Am I wanting to gain favor? Am I wanting to be seen in a particular light? Am I speaking out of my insecurities? All of these slight intentionalities, these different kind of qualities, they really can slightly warp what we say. Do you all understand what I mean by that? You start embellishing. Do you guys know what I mean by that? You start inflating or you're hiding what might be true. You might start exaggerating a little or downplaying the truth. So do you feel this, everybody? And what you can feel into with this is that mindfulness will allow us to check in with the deeper motivation or intention that's underlying or fueling our words. And here's the beautiful thing that we want to stay with is that any degree of dishonesty in our speaking creates distance, doesn't it, everybody? It creates distance. It might be more subtle, but it actually has the effect, whether we're aware of it or not, of pushing others away, disrupting the nature of true connection. As we say in Aikido, does anyone here practice Aikido? I'm going to, oh, right up there. We're going to talk. Yeah. Breaking the spell with the universe, breaking the connection with the universe. Isn't that a beautiful phrase? I'll be talking more about Aikido. Maybe I'll let Alexis share about Aikido. Oh, don't let her get started. Okay. Oh, I love that. Okay, exciting. Okay. So merely saying what is true is also not enough with wise speaking. We can't be ignorant of the context of the conversation or the communication, because sometimes we want to say, okay, sometimes we really want to say what's true, but it's more coming from a place of wanting to be right. Does everyone know what I mean by that? Right? And in wanting to be right, it always is about proving that the other person is wrong. There's always that, right? Do you feel me when I say that? And so it might be true, but if you're not really considering the context, it can be coming from a place of self-righteousness. There's a dynamic of I'm right and you are so wrong. I'm telling you, I know what's true. You don't, right? So we want to pay attention to this as well. To be honest, this kind of self-righteousness, once again, it doesn't deepen our relationship or our connection with that person, does it? And if we really want to create or convince somebody of something coming from that place, it almost never works, right? It almost never works. People just get more deeply polarized and entrenched in their position. So what I often say to myself when I'm in these kinds of, and believe me, I do know what it feels like to want to be right. I really know that. This is deep practice for me. And so what I often do is I pause mindfully and I ask myself, Lisa, do you really want to be right or do you want to be free? And I find this helpful because there's something so enticing about being right, but if I'm mindful, I realize that I'm definitely not free when I'm hooked in that way. Do you guys know what I mean? You can feel me, right? You can feel it in your own experience. Or I'll say, Lisa, do you really want to be right or do you want to be kind? And as we know in current social media discourse, it's such an arena of the fight between who's right and who's wrong, right? And the liberating aspect of kindness allows me to reside somewhere else, which is all about connecting, regardless of what the other person's view is. Connecting, regardless of that other person's view. To find that place feels good, feels skillful. So I lean into kindness with truth as well. And so let's move into kindness as another factor of wise speech. Such a deep practice, kindness. And speaking with, the Buddha would say, you want to speak with a mind and heart, this intentionality that is infused with kindness and care. So this can be really, really helpful when we're navigating a more difficult conversation. Sometimes, and maybe even as I said that, speak with kindness, there can be a misunderstanding that it represents a kind of weakness. Does anyone have that flavor that it means that you're avoiding conflict? Does anybody feel that about kindness? Maybe a little bit, So I want to correct that. The Buddha was clear that wise speech should not create division. It's ultimately, of course, creating connection and harmony and maintaining connection, not breaking your connection with the universe. But the Buddha also encouraged wise speech when you have to point out something that needs to be pointed out, that might be hard or unwelcome for others to hear. So the Buddha was said, no, that's part of wise speech also. Having difficult conversations, pointing out what needs to be pointing out is really important. The Buddha said, a skillful practitioner, having investigated the situation, speaks dispraise of that which deserves dispraise and praise of that that deserves praise. So there's really a place in our wise speech for speaking about what needs to be pointed out, But how do we do this so that it is still kind? How to be kind when dispraising something, how to be skillful. So first, we need to really be in tune with a deeper kind of harmony. Sometimes there needs to be, and maybe all of you have noticed this in your lives at some point, we have to have the courage. There needs to be an upheaval before a deeper harmony can be achieved, right? There needs to be a kind of, we need to look at this, everyone, so that we can really heal, right? That we can really be together, that we can really work this out. So the intention is still harmony, not divisiveness. And this demands that we first listen. So in this really pointing out something that needs to be pointed out, to do this with kindness, we need to really first listen. Really knowing what's going on with the other person or other people. Skillful listening is really important because don't you all agree, we all have a fundamental need to be understood, to just be understood where we are. The most intense conflicts occur between people wanting to be understood when there's no listening going on, right? I worked as a family court mediator for 10 years in the Superior Court. I was a child custody mediator. And I just want to share with you that what I did a lot of the time, I mean, I mediated conflicts between two, for parenting plans between two parents that were, going to court around their custody arrangement. What was so profound and so actually very meaningful was that I was in a position where I often separated them and I would just listen. And I'd really listen. And I would really understand their story and their pain and where they were coming from. And what was so interesting is, they'd come in just loaded for bear, but by my really deep, authentic listening. And I have to tell you, there was not one person that in my mediation process that I did not understand. Not one. When I listened and I could understand, I could get into their corner. I could say, wow, yeah, I get it. And you could see the person just calm down physically. You could see the air go out. And there would be a moment in the room when I could feel the shift when they would go like this. And they would look at me. And only then were they ready to begin to listen to perhaps how we could start working through this. And then they could. They were open for business then. Do you guys know what I mean here? And often in the mediation process, I would have to tell them things they did not want to hear about child development, about the court system. I'd have to point out a lot of very uncomfortable things that in the intention of creating harmony for their children, to get them out of the court system, right? But I had to wait a long time before, and believe me, I could feel when they were ready. When they were ready, and they would often need to cry with me first. So this is really a process, right? But can you feel how kind it is? Can you feel the love behind this? This is conflict resolution, right? So kind speech can create discomfort. It can be painful. Kind, wise speech can be uncomfortable and painful, but that doesn't mean that it isn't good and right. and skillful. As long as you're really staying with and holding a greater harmony in support of healthy resolution. I want to say just a little bit about being timely. Timing is everything, isn't it? What is timely talk? When I'm ready to share and when the other person is in a position to possibly hear, that's something that we have to feel in the moment. I almost think physiologically, like I was describing in the mediation, you have to kind of feel where people are at. You also have to have enough mindfulness to feel into your own experience to notice if you're in a reactive mode or a more regulated and a more responsive mode. Are people reactive or are they more regulated and responsive? And believe me, wise speech has a lot to do with also tuning in to body language. Where are people at? Where are you at? So there's a lot of listening internally, mindfully, listening externally. And with timing, I can really feel into when. Do you guys agree with me? But I don't speak until I'm more regulated and I've taken the time to become more responsive and calmed down. Joseph Goldstein, he said this to a group when someone asked, "What's the most important thing in relationship to other people that you can tell us?" And he said, "You have to take full 100% responsibility for your own reactivity." So I would say time in terms of the timing, this is really about doing that. And then, of course, just really quickly, being useful and of benefit. Um, is it useful? Is it of benefit? When I really drop into this, letting go of idle chatter, I have to tell you, I just speak a lot less a lot of the time. I was out to dinner with friends the other night, and I noticed that I wanted to say stuff, but then I realized it, it really, and I just listened. I had such a good time. So I want to read to you guys something. It's beautiful. And I'm going to talk about Aikido. I know Alexis might be not too much though, but I teach MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction, and we have a session on communication. And so they read this beautiful, it's a story, it's a true story by a Aikido practitioner and also a Buddhist practitioner. His name's Terry Dobson. And I wanted to end with that. And then we can move into small groups and share with each other. But communication is kind of like an Aikido practice. And communication, if we want to kind of define it, it suggests a flow of energy. And it's an open flow. And communication comes from the word communion or union. So you guys know, when you're in a good flow of communication, doesn't it have that feeling? It just feels like you're connected, you're in a flow, there's a feeling of union, right? And it doesn't always mean that you come to an agreement. You stay in it. You stay in it, right? And you're also you're holding the whole experience. You're holding not only your own experience, but the other person's point of view. So you're holding both and. Do you feel that, everybody? And by doing that, you kind of hold harmony. Even though perhaps at the beginning you may not agree with them, that's okay. You can be in communication. You can find a way to stay in that flow. So with Aikido, and I'm going to read this beautiful story by Terry Dobson. Aikido is it's a form of martial arts, but it's actually a form of conflict resolution and peace and harmony. It's a blending. It's where you take the energy of the other person, and even if their energy is aggressive, where you take it and you redirect it so it doesn't harm you or them. So there is this exchange of energy, right? Would you agree with me, Alexis, that that's how Aikido is? She says yes. Okay. So I'm going to read to you this story. So Terry Dobson, he was an Aikido practitioner in Japan, and this is a true account of his. And he was very young. He was in his 20s. So he's riding through on the metro in Japan, in Tokyo. He says the train clanked and rattled through the suburbs of Tokyo on a drowsy spring afternoon. Our car was comparatively empty, a few housewives with their kids in tow, and some old folks going shopping. I gazed absently at the drab houses and dusty hedgerows. At one station, the doors opened, and suddenly the afternoon quiet was shattered by a man bellowing violent, incomprehensible curses. The man staggered into our car. He wore laborer's clothing. He was big, drunk, and dirty. Screaming, he swung at a woman holding a baby. It was a miracle that she was unharmed. Terrified, the couple jumped up and scrambled toward the other end of the car. The laborer aimed a kick at the retreating back of the old woman, but missed as she scuffled to safety. This so enraged the drunk that he grabbed the metal pole at the center of the car and tried to wrench it out of its station. I could see that on his hands there were cuts and bleeding. The train lurched ahead, the passengers frozen with fear. I stood up. I was young then, some 20 years ago, and in pretty good shape. I'd been putting in a solid 8 hours of Aikido training nearly every day for the past 3 years. I liked to throw and grapple. I thought I was tough. Trouble was, my martial skill was untested in actual combat. As students of Aikido, we're not allowed to fight. Aikido, my teacher had said again and again, is the art of reconciliation. Whoever has the mind to fight has broken his connection with the universe. If you try to dominate people, you're already defeated. We study how to resolve conflict, not how to start it. So I listened to his words. I tried hard. I even went so far as to cross the street to avoid the chimpra, the pinball punks who lounged around the train stations. My forbearance exalted me. I felt both tough and holy. In my heart, however, I wanted an absolutely legitimate opportunity whereby I might save the innocent by destroying the guilty. This is it, I said to myself, getting to my feet. People are in danger, and if I don't do something fast, they'll probably get hurt. Seeing me stand up, the drunk recognized a chance to focus his rage. Aha, he roared. A foreigner. You need a lesson in Japanese manners. I held on lightly to the commuter strap overhead and gave him a slow look of disgust and dismissal. I planned to take this turkey apart, but he had to make the first move. I wanted him mad, so I pursed my lips and blew him an insolent kiss. All right, he hollered, you're going to get a lesson. He gathered himself for a rush at me. I hope I don't cry, you guys. This story really always wipes me out. A split second before he could move, someone shouted, "Hey!" It was ear splitting. I remember the strangely joyous, lilting quality of it, as though you and a friend had been searching diligently for something and he suddenly stumbled upon it. Hey! I wheeled to my left. The drunk spun to his right. We both stared down at a little old Japanese man. He must have been well into his 70s, this tiny gentleman sitting there immaculate in his kimono. He took no notice of me, but beamed delightedly at the laborer, as though he had a most important, most welcome secret to share. Come here, the old man said in an easy vernacular, beckoning to the drunk. Come here and talk with me. The big man followed as if on a string. He planted his feet belligerently in front of the old gentleman and roared above the clanking wheels. Why the hell should I talk to you? The drunk now had his back to me. If his elbow moved so much as a millimeter, I'd drop him to his socks. The old man continued to beam at the laborer. What you been drinking? He asked, his eyes sparkling with interest. I've been drinking sake, the laborer bellowed back, and it's none of your business. Flecks of spittle splattered the old man. Okay, that's wonderful, the old man said. Absolutely wonderful. You see, I love sake too. Every night, my wife and I, she's 76, you know, we warm up a little bottle of sake and take it out into the garden, and we sit on an old wooden bench. We watch the sun go down. We look to see how our persimmon tree is doing. My great-grandfather planted that tree, and we worry about whether it will recover from those ice storms we had last winter. Our tree had done better than I expected, though, especially when you consider the poor quality of the soil. It is gratifying to watch when we take our sake out to go enjoy the evening, even when it rains. He looked up at the laborer, eyes twinkling. As he struggled to follow the old man's conversation, the drunk man's face began to soften. His fist slowly unclenched. Yeah, he said, I love persimmons too. His voice trailed off. Yeah, the old man said, smiling, and I'm sure you have a wonderful wife. No, said the laborer, my wife died. Very gently swaying to the motion of the train, the big man began to sob. I don't have a wife. I don't have a home. I don't have a job. I'm ashamed. Tears rolled down his face. A spasm of despair rippled through his body. Now it was my turn. Standing there in a well-scrubbed youthful innocence, my make those worlds safe for democracy righteousness, I suddenly felt dirtier than he was. When the train arrived at my stop, as the doors opened, I heard the old man cluck sympathetically. My, he said. That's a difficult predicament indeed. Sit down here and tell me all about it. I turned my head for one last look. The laborer was sprawled on the seat, his head in the old man's lap. The old man was softly stroking the filthy matted hair. As the train pulled away, I sat down on a bench. What I had wanted to do with muscle had been accomplished with kind words. I had just seen Aikido tried in combat, and the essence of it was love. I would have to practice the art with an entirely different spirit. It would take a long time before I would speak about the resolution of conflict. Isn't that a beautiful story? Yeah, I held it together. I always cry. It makes me cry too, because don't you all feel that there's such a need for this right now? It's so sad. You know, my heart's breaking with so much compassion about the suffering around this right now. So what I'd like to do is move you into small groups to kind of begin to experience this, maybe groups of 3 or 4, also those online. And what I'd like you to do is just do this very simply, is to take turns one at a time. And the person whose turn it is will simply listen. And each of the other people will just take turns one at a time and say something kind to them. And it can be really simple, like, may you be happy. May you be free. You know, it can be really simple. Just say whatever you'd like to say to them. And see if you can tune into the person and wish them well from that place. And let each person, when they take their turn, just listen and receive some kind words this way. And you'll just take turns, yeah? And then with any leftover time, you can just share as a small group about what that felt like. Does that sound good? Does that sound nice? So get into small groups of 3 or 4. Can you all find that? Just around you. You guys together in the front, the 3 of you perhaps. If you need help, just don't think too much about it.
My question is which is when you get into those situations, and I completely agree with what you're talking about with live speech and reactivity.
Yeah.
If you don't react, which I understand, and the other person, I often in my brain think, well, what are they going to do if I try to, if I know I'll be reactive?
Yeah.
How do I walk away from that situation without making them feel rejected or making them in some form
Yeah.
not be like, why are you walking away? Because that has happened to
Yeah.
me a couple times.
Oh, yeah. 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 Good question, right? So I'm a parent. I know so well. And I taught mindful parenting for many years in the school. So how this works is that it's really good if you're transparent. And teenagers love to see that you're human.
Do they?
Well, it can open up the
Sure. Yeah,
connection.
yeah.
So the way this can work, although you'd have to find your own authentic way of saying it, is the real thing is to track your own reactivity and this is not just for, what's your name?
Gavin.
Gavin. It's not just for Gavin, but what do you notice when you're reactive in your body? And everyone else can be kind of feeling, what do you notice when you get reactive? What do you notice in your body?
mean, tension for sure.
Tension,
Yep. Yep.
you know,
Anger from some version of anger happens, right?
energy
Like,
and,
yeah.
you know, starts to,
Yep.
right? Okay, so you notice that as soon as you can. And then you can say, hold on, I am getting reactive. And when I get reactive, I might say something that I regret and I love you and I don't want to mess this up. I really care about what we're talking about. Can you give me a timeout? I'm going to give myself a timeout. I'm going to take a break, but let's agree when we come back. And is that okay? So that I can speak from a place where I'm coming from my best self. I'm regulated. I can really hear you. When I'm reactive, I only come from a primitive brainstem. I can't think straight. And you know, and then just talk out loud and say, but I really care. I just don't want to screw this up. And I don't want to say anything at all that might harm you. So take a break, say, okay, I'm ready. I'm okay. Okay, I feel, and you'll know the difference. And, you know, you go and you take a deep breath and you get mindful, you get embodied, you regulate your nervous system, you come back into full brain function, you'll feel the difference. And then you go, okay, let's go. So it's keeping the flow going, but you might have to say, it's breaking down, time out, red flag.
How do you re-engage after that? Because that's sometimes I think I've gotten to the place a couple times where I'm able to walk away. No, but not walk away is the wrong word, but
get the agreement that
yeah, okay.
This is something that
right.
It's a we.
So that you both will come back to the space.
Collaborative, yeah.
Right.
And of course, it depends on the situation and everything. And what happens is your kids start to trust that you're safe.
Right. That makes sense.
And then they'll also go, hey, Dad's self-aware.
I don't know if we'll ever get there. Thank you.
I'm of Sicilian heritage, so I do know about reactivity. I really do. I've learned the hard way. Oh, there's a question online. Yes. Yes. I can't see the name. There's Dennis and also, yes, her hand is up. Yes, please. Your hand is up. Carol? Oh, okay, great. Carol, please.
I think, sorry, one moment.
Okay. But very good question.
Lisa, good morning to you. Or
Good morning.
afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you again for a profound morning meditation. I'm so deeply touched and so directly heart connected to you today. Ah, what can I say?
Let's just sit with that right now. It's a good thing, right?
I shared tears.
And you're online, which is so awesome that can be true. So go ahead. Oh, go ahead. Yes.
Yes, thank you. And I'm all about music and growing music men's minds working with music in a community of seniors with neurodegenerative diseases.
Yeah.
It works. Music is so healing.
Yeah.
And today, as you talk about wise speech and how to calm a moment of super overactivity with speech, the power of speech, we are now working with music for conflict resolution. And just like wise speech, music runs a parallel because the vibration of music is universal and needs no alphabet, no translator. So the brushstroke is immediately global using a universal language. And we're now launching a really big global initiative using music for conflict resolution, not only for the adults, but we're now also paralleling a program of prevention, starting with tots, teens, young adults, all the way up to include seniors, all doing intergenerational music projects globally. So that the adults needing music to get to the heart of the matter without language, settle huge world conflicts. Tots all the way up are going to know about using music for conflict resolution as they grow to become adults. And to Gavin directly, I love Lisa talking about coming from a brainstem. Let me have a timeout. Coming from a brainstem.
Well, you know what I mean, right?
And cooling off period could be, let's sing your favorite song.
Yeah.
And settle.
Yeah.
The over reactivity.
Yeah.
With a favorite melody and say, we got to sing a song first and then we'll talk.
Yeah. That sounds beautiful.
Neutralize the environment instantaneously. So I throw that out to the group.
Oh, how beautiful. Isn't it inspiring what she's sharing? And also, can you feel behind as she's speaking? Can you feel the wholesome intentionality in her voice and the heart from which she's speaking? Can you feel that when she speaks? And your voice is very musical. Yeah. Thank you. Deep bow to the work you're doing in the world. And may music be a part of this flow. What's the name of your website if you'd love to share it with our group?
Thank you for that. Music Men's Minds. And the MES, MINDS, my phone number is there.
Music Men's Minds. May it be so.
Getting on board. This is a huge liftoff, and we're delighted to have all the support and all of the travelers on this magical journey.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I know that we're out of time. There's a few more questions. So for those who are able to stay a little bit longer, I'm okay with staying a little bit longer. I'm happy to stay for a few more questions. Is that okay, everyone? It's a good theme. Dennis.
Hi, Lisa, and
hi.
Hello, everybody there. It's interesting that Carol's comments just now, and before her, Gavin's comments, kind of relate to some of the comments I had. But Gavin was talking about, working with his kids, and you mentioned something, I believe, about you have to let your kids know that you're human. And I taught music to junior high students for 30 years, and
Oh, wow.
and
Wow.
it took me about 10 to 15 years to figure out that exactly what you said. You have to let them know that you're human too. And one of the things I learned just by chance was that when I made a mistake and some kid pointed it out to me, to own it and to say, you know what, you're right, I did make a mistake there. And
Yeah.
that's just one of the things that I found useful in working with kids like that. And of course, you know, once in a while, I even let them know that I could be just as goofy as they were. And, to the point where sometimes they'd be, I could see on their faces, they were kind of embarrassed for me. But I think it kind of helped
It brings them in. Yeah.
level things out a little bit. And
Yeah.
Carol, I'm really interested in getting in contact with you about the work you're doing with music, because I totally believe in music in that way.
Join forces for sure.
Yeah, and as far as the exercise we did today in groups, um, you know, it really hit me here. And one of the things about it is that, you know, when I'm with friends, especially my male friends,
Hmm.
there's very little of that. In fact, it's all good natured, but there's more put downs and things are joke. Everything's a joke, and rarely do you have this. With my female friends, it's a little different, but
Right.
with my male friends, and so this was a great experience today.
Great. And maybe you can show up with your male friends in this way.
I'm going to make that effort.
Yeah, in a way that feels really good for you. Thank you. Thank you, Dennis. Last question, unless there's one in the room here, Roz. Thank you. I know we're over time, so
Okay, I'll
let's
be brief. I'll
mindful
be
of our
brief.
time.
First of all, Carol, I think that's so awesome what you shared, and I'm going to be checking it too. Personally, my husband has a neurological disease, and the hospice social worker comes and they sing together, and it's so awesome to see him smile. Makes him so happy. And my own dad had Parkinson's, and we could barely understand him when he spoke, but he could sing what he wanted. And that was so profound when the speech therapist advised us that we could try to use singing as a way for him to communicate.
Right.
That was just totally profound. And when I share that with people, they're so shocked, but I know it's from different parts of the brain, and it just changed everything. Thank you so much.
You're
And
welcome.
thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome. Carol, hold on 1 second. I just want to see it. And thank you. Yeah. Oh, Alexis is saying the Zoom room can be open for you guys to chat and share.
Oh.
But is there any other question in the room? I just want to leave space. Oh yes, in the back. Thank you so much. Thank you. And then this will be our last question. Is that okay, everyone? Yes.
Hey, yeah, I had a question about wise speech when it comes to somebody in your family or somebody that's very close to you and you see them struggling
Yeah.
and causing harm to themselves because they are not in the right headspace.
Yeah.
And you don't want to come across like dominating or controlling, like you said,
Yeah.
because it will, and you've seen that before, it just does not go anywhere, but you still want to get through to them and you try to find maybe a time when it's a bit more balanced where they can hear you that they should get help for themselves. So how to go about that wisely, because you don't want to cause more harm, but you also don't want to lose them.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. And just really what might be a good first step, not knowing them and not knowing the situation, is see what it's like to really, and yet timing, remember being sensitive, tuning into them and beginning to plant some seeds and letting them know that you really like to listen to them and that you'd like to just let them talk so that you can understand.
But what if they don't trust you?
Yeah, if they don't. Yeah, there's only so, there you can still hold the intention. You can let them know. You can stay very, very present in that intention with them and put out the intention. But often with equanimity, we don't have total control. There's only so much that you can do. But people are listening. And people that are suffering, if you really show up in a way that's very mindful, you really tune into your own intention with not wanting to fix them. People don't want to be fixed. That you really just genuinely care, and you're not bringing an agenda. And just refine your presence, show up in that way, and probably the person will feel it. Maybe over time, they'll start to feel more comfortable with you, but it is a process. Does that? And may the person be well. May the person really be free, and may you be support to them. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Thank you all so much for your time tonight on this today on this Sunday. Deep bow, and just want to dedicate the merit that made this time that we've all spent here together. May it reduce and alleviate suffering in the world with every word, with every communication. May we stay in the flow. May we not break our connection with the universe at this time. Thank you so much, everyone. Be well. See you
And
next
just
time.
just two quick
yes.
announcements. Sorry to interrupt, Lisa.
Yeah.
Thank you all for joining us today. And if anyone who didn't get a chance to would like to make a donation to the organization to help us continue to pass these teachings forward freely, we can help you with that out front. And I also just want to put in a word that Lisa's doing a retreat, a day-long retreat at our beautiful Benedict Canyon on April 26th, which is a Saturday, called Breaking the Spell of Anxiety. So you can check on our website for that. So that's all. Thank you. And we can leave the chairs and the cushions where they are. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.